On today's episode, the Cubs almost trade Willson Contreras to the Astros. We go over all the implications of that, plus the offseason kicks in gear this week. We preview it and get into some news and notes already about the offseason, including some important dates to be aware of. Here we go.
Are Locked On Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cubs. Alongside Sam Olber, I'm Matt Cozy. Pleased to be with you for a Monday episode. And there's certainly a lot to go over as we kick off another week here on the show. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. And we're lifelong fans taking our passion into discussion with you on all things Cubs. Sam, it is officially the offseason as the Astros defeat the Phillies in the World Series. It took 6 games for them to lock up the championship. Excited to get into official offseason goings on with you. And I know I've seen you for the last few minutes, but how was the rest of your weekend? And here we go.
What are you trying to taunt me by saying kick off a Monday episode and on a bit about Illinois' punter?
No, but I do have an Iowa shirt on. They had a big victory over Purdue.
Sorry, I didn't hear you for a second there. But look, how's my weekend? It was really bad. My football team completely, blew everything on Saturday. And then today, my quarterback, and we do have a quarterback, lost a game because of some poor officiating. But otherwise, I'm okay. Let's be chipper. Let's pretend everything's great on this Sunday night. Daylight savings got dark at 3:20.
No, it didn't.
Let's talk Cubs baseball.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I feel like the Verizon guy.
Yeah.
So there was a report in Jeff Passan of ESPN. He did a game story on the Astros winning last night. And in there, he had a lot of different nuggets that we've never heard before. And one was that the Cubs at this past trade deadline were in agreement on a trade sending catcher Willson Contreras to the Astros for starting pitcher Jose Urquidy, but owner Jim Crane squashed it following a conversation with manager Dusty Baker. I do have a quote from Dusty that I want to get to in a minute, but Sam, what was your first reaction when you heard about this? Is that this was certainly surprising news that was revealed for the first time?
I was not surprised. When we discussed this trade deadline, it was obvious to both of us that the market for Contreras was down. That trade would have made a lot of sense for both parties. I probably would have supported that trade, although Urquidy, how do I pronounce his name? Urquidy? Urquidy, has some peripherals that aren't great, but Dusty Baker, did you see his reasoning as to why he told the owner to, axe that trade? Did you see it? Because I did.
Yes, he said, much as I like Willson Contreras, Urquidy was one of our best pitchers then, Baker said. I needed a guy that wasn't going to complain about not playing every day. And this is his free agent year. That's tough. When you trade for a player in his free agent year, everybody's numbers and stuff, and I can't blame them, no doubt, but that's not what we needed, end quote. Wow.
Yeah, and I know this is going to rub a lot of fans the wrong way. I think it's a really fair point from Dusty Baker. They didn't think that his bat was worth what he was going to bring with other stuff, and when you look at how Contreras finished the season, Baker was right. And Christian Vasquez, I don't know if that meant that if that means, was that before they traded for Christian Vasquez as well? Or
probably.
Did they trade for Christian Vasquez because they didn't get Willson? If it's the latter, I think they made the right move and they're world champions. So you can't really question it. And I think it's interesting to note that there were trades on the table. I think Jed did a pretty good job of being like, yeah, we didn't want to trade Willson because we couldn't find anything that made sense. No, you found something, and then they backed out on it. So yeah, I was fascinated by that. I think I tagged you in the tweet maybe early this morning or
You
last
did.
night.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, because I thought that was fascinating news. And again, it'll be really, really interesting to see the market on Willson Contreras, because if a manager like Dusty Baker, who's been around as long as he has, said, hey, you know what, I think we're better off without this guy, with not giving up a pitcher that was helping us win at the time, it'll be interesting to hear what everybody else, goes for him. Obviously, he won't be in a contract year. He'll sign a new deal, but it's interesting, and maybe the Cubs are still interested in Urquidy. So,
yeah, I don't think you got his name right.
Yeah,
it's Urquidy.
Yeah, it's a hard name to get. Urquidy.
I had to spell it out in my rundown because I knew I was going to botch it. So I have a few different things here with this. Ready?
Yes, I'm excited.
Okay, so yeah, you can't blame the Astros because, and I think even if they advance to the World Series, you still can't. You could still chalk it up as, we got into this a little bit last week. They've been in a lot of World Series. They've lost most of them, but they made it to the last series possible, right? So clearly they did something right. Christian Vasquez seemed to be a pretty good fit. He actually DH'd last night, which was a little bit of a surprise when the lineup was released. So you have the performance angle that Willson wasn't exactly knocking the door down of offensive production around the deadline, and he didn't do that after the deadline either. The part that is most damaging here is the Dusty Baker line when he says, and he labels them first and last name. Much as I like Willson Contreras, Urquidy was one of our best pitchers then. And then here comes the kicker sentence. It's really a bombshell. I needed a guy that wasn't going to complain about not playing every day. So now there's two things there. One is Dusty Baker is saying that Willson Contreras and or his reputation around the league was such that if he entered the Astros room and was therefore not an everyday player, that Willson was going to put up a fuss. And they didn't want to deal with that, and it could have even damaged their run. And the second thing is, Dusty, you're kind of reaching, man. Willson would only provide energy. He would only bring the juice every day. Why are you calling him out? But he felt convicted enough to label him by first and last name, and even went so far as to say, hey, we don't want his energy in our room because we're loaded. So there's a chance if a player of Willson Contreras' caliber comes in, he's not even going to play every day, and we don't know if he's cool with that. And we want to win the World Series. So because he's not cool with that, you're going to have to nix the trade. He walks up the stairs in his gym shoes and his medical gloves and tells Jim Crane, we don't want to do this deal with the Cubs. Jim Crane says, we're not going to do this deal with the Cubs, and that's it.
So I love
it feels like we've been on for 40 minutes.
I love what you said, Matt, but I gotta say, I don't totally disagree with Dusty. And it's not even a knock on Willson. Willson is a high energy guy, like you said. Willson is a guy that likes to be a part of things. And maybe, just maybe, that's not what Houston needed. They needed a guy like Vasquez that kind of just fits in, is low maintenance. Willson is high maintenance. I don't know. I just found it interesting. I know you did as well. You're a lot bigger of a Willson Contreras fan than I am. So that may make you a little bit more upset. But how can I know hindsight's 2020, but how can you argue with the guy who just won a world championship? And I would like to just toot my own horn for 1 second, because I did say on this very show, whoever won game 4 would win this championship. And Houston did win that game via a no-hitter. So
good for you.
And by the way, I know a lot of fans don't like this because I got a little bit of flack on Twitter for it. I'm happy that Dusty Baker won one. I know that he completely wrecked Mark Pryor's arm in 2003 and deserved a lot more blame than he got for that whole collapse. Wasn't Bartman's fault. It wasn't Pryor's fault. Go to your bullpen. And then 04 was one of the most disappointing years in the history of this city. And then 05 and 06 were train wrecks. I understand that. But any guy that's been in baseball 50 plus years and has had as many heartbreaks, the human element of me, I have a good soft heart. You want to see him finally get one. So good for him, and move on.
Well, the other thing on this is possibly missing out on Urquidy if you wanted to get in that at all.
Well, I think the Cubs still may go for him.
Here's a 27-year-old right-handed pitcher on team control through the 2025 season. He would be a nice addition to this club.
Yeah, but I don't love his numbers. He gives up tons of home runs. He gives up tons of them. His peripherals say he's worse than he is. The the Astros didn't love him enough to put him in their starting rotation. He was behind Verlander, Valdez, McCullers, and Javier in the postseason. I think we need, you know what I think we need, bat missers stuff.
Right.
I'm not sure how much different will he be next year than a Drew Smiley. I don't know.
Yeah, the team control part is what's enticing, but yeah, 3.94 ERA, 1.17 WHIP with 134 strikeouts and 38 walks in 164 innings for Urquidy in 2022.
Cute.
There is a lot of free agents out there. We're going to go over some projections for them in terms of the dollars and cents and also teams in the mix, including the Chicago National League Ball Club. And that's all coming up right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. Illinois and Iowa are two Big Ten college basketball contenders this season. You could take a look at some college hoops odds as the season gets going. It actually tips off on Monday evening, which is really exciting. And you can find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. Illinois has a huge bounce-back game with Purdue next weekend now. What's the early line on that? Do we have any idea?
Yeah, 6.5.
The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
And I just want to say something before we get into free agents. I don't want to be within 50 miles of you this Saturday, and I don't want any texts either, because I know you and everybody around you is go Hawks, because you now are the biggest Purdue fan in the history of this country, needing that. So I don't want any texts from you. Go ahead.
Well, there's still 3 games left. If there was 1 game left, I'd be, more jazzed up, but there's still a difficult path. I know what you're inferring. Yeah. Can Iowa leap Illinois in the standings? And it's going to take a lot of pieces, a lot of dominoes to fall, if you will. Mm-hmm. And speaking of dominoes, how about the free agent market this offseason? Yeah. As 2 separate write-ups from over the weekend from the Athletics, Jim Bowden, Sam, and the New York Post, John Heyman. Mm-hmm. They list Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, and Cody Senga, all with interest from the Cubs. Separate lists also have Dansby Swanson, Jose Abreu, Tyler Anderson, and Kenley Jansen linked to the Cubs.
No, thank you.
The Correa projections, top 30 M's for either 9 or 10 years.
Wow.
Turner projections, top 30 M's for either 8 or 9 years. I also have some numbers for Senga and Abreu. Heyman says Senga 5 for 65, while Bowden says 3 for 72.
Mm.
And Heyman, with a little bit of a reach, I feel. We'll break all these down in a second, but Heyman says 3 for 75 on Abreu.
Yeah,
And,
right.
and Bowden says a little more manageable, 2 for 34. Where would you like to start here as we start to visualize these players in red and blue?
Let's just get the Abreu thing out of the way because that's egregious. 3 years, $75 million for how old is he? 36.
Yeah.
Coming off a year where he had 15 home runs is not going to happen. 2 years, 35. 2 years, 40. Fine. Check mark. Interested. Cool with it. Senga, both options you mentioned, 5 for 65, 3 for 72. 5 for 65 seems a bit low. 3 for 72, interested.
That's the
check
Stroman
mark.
deal.
Yeah, check mark. The Correa thing's interesting, man. I don't think they're going to give him 9 or 10 years.
It's a lot of years.
That's a lot of years.
Oh, no.
I think maybe something. I've always said something.
I think the Cubs want to go like 6.
I was thinking like 7 for 240.
Yeah, you could sign me up for that.
I'll
spend some time in that line. I'll get on that ride.
Yeah. You're tall enough.
Right.
7 for 240. The Trey Turner thing, anything more than 5-6 years makes no sense because then you're asking for that to be a bad contract when he gets into his mid-30s. You're confirming it, and then you're putting your back against the wall by making yourself win now and say, hey, we got to win in these next 2-3 years because when Trey Turner's going to decline, he's not going to be fast forever. Whereas Carlos Correa doesn't rely that much on speed. That's been my whole thing of why I think he's more interesting in a long-term situation than a Trey Turner. 10 years or 9 years to Trey Turner is not the move for me. Just like it wasn't the move 7 years for Baez. You have to think about this long-term. Correa's the guy for me. 7 years, see if you can get that done. If he won't do less than 8, then fine. I know you like Tyler Anderson. I personally don't. I think he was a Dodgers project that overachieved in a Dodger uniform. And I think if he comes to Wrigley Field, he goes back to his Pirate self, which is just another decent pitcher. We have plenty of those. We need somebody that ups, say it again, ups the ante. You know what I mean? A Rodon. Maybe it's a Senga. I don't know. But somebody that just, we Wisniewski and Stroman and Steele and Thompson and Smiley. And we have plenty of these guys. We need somebody that ups the stuff. Something that we don't have. Uniqueness. 98 with movements. Was there anything about Rodon on there?
Yeah, and it's not good news. Neither Bowden or Heyman list the Cubs as potential teams in the mix, and they both have them at 5 for 145, which is a 29 AAV.
Man, these contracts are getting bigger as we speak.
I know.
That's disappointing.
Yeah, it's not. It's interesting, and yeah, it's a little discouraging.
So let me ask you this: as a Cub fan, do you think signing?
I am a Cubs fan. Yes.
Do you think signing Senga is enough to make you feel great about this rotation? I think it's too big of a question mark.
No, it's not enough. They would have to make a trade then as well.
And do you have any interest in Kenley Jansen? Because I do not at all.
Yeah, I would consider maybe doing a separate segment on him during this week. But yes, I would have interest.
Okay, so maybe we'll save that for a weekly debate because I don't.
Yeah, because I think we could loop in Kimbrel in that debate as well. Potential reunion with Kimbrel, Craig.
No, I know who you're speaking of.
Yeah, you have quite a reaction. What are you looking at there?
I was going to make a jury duty joke, but I can't find my sheet.
Okay.
No, thank you. But anyways, we could.
What's really interesting is this number for Jacob deGrom from Bowden.
Can I guess it?
Yes.
How many years did
you want to know the years?
Yeah, the years were
2.
2 years, 100.
With an opt-out after the first.
2 years, 100.
2 years, 90.
Yeah.
If it's 2 years, 90 with an opt-out after the first year, the Cubs better sign him.
I got to admit, 2 years, 90.
It's too good of a deal.
2 years, 90 with a guy like DeGrom, I would hop on that.
The Cubs should buy a fast pass for that.
Yeah, no,
Go right to the front of the line.
Man, it's kind of crazy what these guys, not to sound too old school, but man, I work hard for ends meet.
Let's get to some important offseason dates coming up next. We're back here on Locked On Cubs. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. And thanks for joining us for a Monday episode as the offseason has officially begun. The GM meetings start Monday in Las Vegas. And Willson Contreras and Wade Miley are officially free agents, although the Cubs could offer Contreras the qualifying offer by Thursday. And Drew Smiley has a mutual option with the team. That also has to be decided by Thursday.
Wow.
Other deadlines and dates that are important. The second one would be a decision on whether to accept a qualifying offer if it's made. That's by Tuesday, November 15th. Also, deadline for placing and protecting Rule 5 eligible players on the 40-man roster will be that same day, Tuesday the 15th. And finally, the non-tender deadline has been moved up for players eligible for arbitration. That's now Friday, November 18th. So between now and next Friday, the 18th, there's going to be a flurry of moves, and we're not talking about snow.
Yeah. I'm excited about these dates. It'll give us something to really kind of hone in on. I don't expect any tremendous surprises. What do you think the Smiley decision entails?
I think they're going to not do the mutual option. They're going to try to renegotiate to a 2-year deal. So we'll see about that. But yeah, I would like for him to be in the fold. I just don't know what that looks like yet. Right. And then we'll do a whole episode on the non-tender guys. When news breaks, we'll be all over that. We're going to empty the mailbag Tuesday's episode as well. More player grades, more roster discussion. And there was even the first player off the board today, Edwin Diaz, back to the Mets.
What a bad deal.
5 years, $102 million.
You don't pay closers $20 million a year. I don't care how much money. And let me tell you this, something that you didn't report as the host of the show, Matt Mervin.
Oh, yes. He was named AFL MVP.
I mean, you want to talk about a full year? Why this guy should be in the election on Tuesday?
Yeah. I'm ready to pencil him in officially.
I mean, he is.
And I'm tired of hearing about Rizzo.
He's had one.
You got this kid crushing it, and y'all want to bring Rizzo back. The same. He's a left-handed hitter that's 10 years older. Okay.
This guy has had one of the great minor league campaigns I've ever heard.
No, one of the best campaigns. He should run for governor.
This was one of the best campaigns since the 1960 Kennedy situation.
All right.
Boy, hey, they pay a lot of money to win that election, huh?
Thanks for joining us for a Monday episode. Sam, how was softball last week?
Great. Thank you for reminding me. We won that baseball game 13-7. I reached base all 3 times, not one time hitting the ball with any sort of authority. Made all the plays at short. This Thursday night will be a three-part postseason series. The quarters, semis, and championship will all be played if we're victorious. So hopefully things go well.
Be sure to hit that subscribe button for Locked On Cubs on YouTube and smash the like button on all your favorite Locked On Cubs content. What do you think of the Contreras non-trade to the Astros, or Urquidy, possibly to the Cubs, all those free agent contract projections? Let us know. We're also Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods on the audio side. And once again, thanks for making us your first listen every day. Continue to make your second the Locked On Sports Today podcast. Locked On Sports Today is our 22-minute recap of the previous night in sports. It features local experts on each of the big stories, as well as the take of the day from one of the Locked On hosts. For Sam Olber, I'm Matt Cozy. This is Locked On Cubs.